This is Real Talk with Preshpen, where we say the things people are afraid to say out loud.
What do you do when the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally had conditions?
Welcome back to Real Talk with Preshpen. I'm Preshpen, and tonight we are going somewhere that will make a lot of you shift in your seats. Because tonight we are talking about family, not the family you chose, the family you were born into, the one that was supposed to be your foundation, your safe place, your first experience of love. But what happens when that family was none of those things? What happens when the people who were supposed to protect you were the ones doing the damage? What happens when blood, the thing we're told is thicker than water, turns out to be the very thing drowning you?
I have two guests tonight who could not be more different in how they answer that question.
Pastor David Owusu has spent over 2 decades building and restoring families through his ministry. He believes family is sacred, non-negotiable, the foundation upon which everything else is built, and he is not here to apologize for that. Maya Thompson is a survivor, a woman who was abandoned by her family when she needed them most, who was abused inside the walls that were supposed to keep her safe, who was forced into a life she never chose by the very people who claimed to love her. She is not here to perform forgiveness. She is here to tell the truth. Pastor Owusu, Maya, let's get into it.
Thank you for having me. Family has been at the center of my life's work for more than 20 years. I've seen broken families heal, relationships restored, and people find their way back to each other. So while I recognize that many people carry deep wounds from their families, I still believe family is sacred and worth fighting for.
And my experience has led me somewhere very different. I know what it's like to be hurt by the people who were supposed to protect you. I know what it's like to be told that keeping the peace matters more than telling the truth. I'm not here to attack family. I'm here to talk about what happens when family becomes the source of the pain.
Segment 1. The first betrayal.
Maya, let's start with you. When people say family isn't everything, a lot of people hear that as an excuse, as selfishness, as someone who just couldn't handle the hard work of family relationships. What do you say to that? I say, walk a mile in my shoes first, then talk to me about selfishness. I was 17 years old when my mother found out I had been abused by my uncle, her brother. And do you know what she did? She told me to keep quiet. She told me that what happened in the family stayed in the family. She chose her brother over her daughter at 17, and then had the audacity to call it love.
And that is a horrific thing. I'm not going to sit here and minimize what happened to you, Maya. What your uncle did was evil, because what you are describing is not family failing you. That is individuals failing you. Broken, sinful people making terrible choices. That is not an indictment of family as an institution.
With respect, Pastor, when every individual in the institution fails you, at what point do we stop defending the institution?
We don't throw away the concept of family because some families are broken any more than we throw away the concept of church because some churches are corrupt.
I threw away the church too, so that argument doesn't land with me. Maya, take us further. You said your family abandoned you, abused you, and forced you into a life you never wanted. That's 3 separate wounds. Which one cut the deepest? The one I didn't see coming. I could eventually call it what it was. But the abandonment, my mother standing in that kitchen and choosing silence over her own child, that one I am still finding words for. Because it didn't just hurt me, it taught me something about my worth. It told me at 17, in the most vulnerable moment of my life, that I was not worth the discomfort of the truth. And I carried that lesson into every relationship I had for the next 15 years.
And I hear that, I genuinely hear that. But Maya and I ask this with the deepest compassion. Do you think it is possible that your mother was also a victim? That she was operating from her own fear, her own trauma, her own broken understanding of what love looks like?
I think that is absolutely possible, and I also think it changes nothing about what she did to me. You can be a victim and still cause damage. Those two things are not mutually exclusive.
Agreed. But does understanding that not open a door to something, to healing, to
forgiveness? Is that where you're going?
To peace, for your own sake?
Pastor Owusu, I have been in therapy for 6 years. I have done more work on forgiveness than most people do in a life. But I absolutely refuse to let forgiveness be used as a tool to pull me back into a relationship that nearly destroyed me. Forgiving someone does not mean handing them another weapon. You know, listening to this conversation, I'm realizing something. People often talk about abuse as the wound. But sometimes the deeper wound is what happens after the abuse. It's the silence. It's the disbelief. It's the moment someone you trust decides that protecting a reputation matters more than protecting you. And when that happens, the damage doesn't stop with the event itself. It changes the way you see yourself. Let's take this conversation further.
Segment 2. Where loyalty breaks.
Pastor Owusu, you said family is God's design, but God also designed free will. And some people have used that free will to do terrible things to their families. How do you reconcile that?
The same way I reconcile any broken thing in this world. Sin entered. People make choices. Terrible choices. But the answer to broken families is not to abandon the concept. It is to heal, restore, and rebuild. My entire ministry is built on that conviction.
But what about the person who has tried to heal, tried to restore, tried to rebuild, and the family keeps breaking them? At what point does your theology make room for someone to just walk away?
I believe in boundaries. I believe in distance when necessary. I do not believe in permanent severance unless there is genuine danger.
There was genuine danger. I was being forced into a marriage at 22 by a family that had already shown me exactly how much my voice mattered to them. Is that not danger enough?
Forced how? Physically?
Emotionally, financially, spiritually. They told me it was God's will. They told me I'm Plosin. They cut off my education funding when I stopped speaking to me. They told extended family I had brought shame on the household. Tell me, Pastor, what would you have done?
I would have prayed. I would have
I prayed every single night, and then I packed a bag and I left, and that was the most godly thing I ever did for myself.
I am not saying you were wrong to leave that situation, but I genuinely worry about a generation that is being told that cutting off family is empowerment, that walking away is always strength, because sometimes what looks like strength is actually unhealed pain making decisions.
And sometimes what looks like family loyalty is actually fear dressed up in tradition. Say that again, Maya. Sometimes what looks like family loyalty is actually fear dressed up in tradition. People stay in toxic family relationships not because they love their family, but because they are terrified of what leaving will cost them. The judgment, the loneliness, the identity crisis of becoming someone whose family rejected them. That is not loyalty, that is survival dressed up as devotion.
And I would argue that real love, the kind I preach about, the kind that holds families together through storms, is not fear. It is a choice, a daily, conscious, costly choice to show up for the people God placed in your life.
But what about the people God placed in your life who keep costing you everything and giving nothing back? At what point does that choice become self-destruction?
At the point where you have done everything within your power to restore the relationship and it is still not moved. But Maya, have you truly done everything?
But maybe not. I almost did not survive my family, Pastor Owusu. So yes, I believe I did everything I could.
I hear you, but I'd like to challenge that point because everything means different things to different people. Sometimes everything means 2 conversations. Sometimes it means 20 years. I am not saying you gave too little. I am asking, what did you give?
I gave 3 years of trying to open dialogue with a family that called my questions rebellion. I gave letters that were never answered. I gave phone calls that were put on speaker so the whole family could hear and mock what I was saying. I gave an olive branch at my grandmother's funeral, the one moment I thought maybe we could find our way back to each other, and my mother turned her back to me in front of everyone, in front of my grandmother's coffin. So when you ask me if I have done everything, yes, Pastor, I have done everything short of disappearing completely. And some days they made me feel like that was what they wanted.
I owe you an apology for that question.
What?
I asked if you'd done everything as if the burden of restoration was yours to carry alone, as if the one who was wronged is also responsible for fixing it. That was unfair, and I am sorry.
I thank you. I was not expecting that. Neither was I. But let's not let this moment of grace stop the argument because I'm not done. Pastor, you just apologized. But I want to stay in the tension for a moment longer because what Maya just described, the letters, the phone calls, the funeral, that is not someone who gave up easily. That is someone who kept showing up to a table where nobody was saving her a seat. And yet there are people watching this right now who will still say, but she should keep trying. She should keep going back. Because family, because God, because culture. How do you respond to those people?
I respond with this. There is a difference between perseverance and punishment. Perseverance says I will keep working toward healing. Punishment says I will keep walking into the same fire because leaving feels like failure. God calls us to perseverance. He does not call us to punishment. And a family that turns its back at a grandmother's funeral.
Powerful.
That has moved beyond a difficult relationship into something else entirely.
Something else. That is a careful way of saying it.
What word would you use?
Cruelty. I would call it cruelty because it was not accidental. It was not a moment of weakness. It was deliberate, calculated. My mother knew exactly what she was doing when she turned that back. She wanted me to feel it. She wanted everyone to see. And the saddest part is, she probably went home that night and told herself she had done the righteous thing.
And that is the most dangerous kind of harm, the kind inflicted by people who are absolutely convinced they are doing right.
Exactly, because how do you fight that? How do you argue with someone who has wrapped their control in love so tightly they cannot tell the difference anymore?
You stop trying to make them see it, because some people will never see it, and waiting for them to see it before you allow yourself to heal, that is handing them power they have not earned and do not deserve.
Did you just tell me to stop waiting for my mother's apology?
I am telling you, your healing cannot be held hostage to her understanding. You deserve peace whether she ever gets it or not.
6 years of therapy and a pastor on a podcast just said the thing I needed to hear. That is what happens when you stop performing and start talking. But I want to sit here for a moment because what just happened in this room is not small. A pastor, a man who has built his entire life in ministry on the sanctity of family, just told a woman that her healing does not need her mother's permission. That is not a small thing. That is not something you hear every Sunday. And I want the people watching this to understand what it cost him to say it. Because Pastor, that statement goes against everything your congregation expects from you, everything your tradition says you should protect. You just cracked the wall of the very institution you represent. How does that feel?
Honest. It feels honest, and perhaps overdue.
Overdue. That word is doing a lot of work right now. And Maya, I want to come back to you because you came into this room ready to fight, ready to defend every scar. And somewhere in this segment, something shifted. I saw it on your face. What happened inside you just now? I think for the first time, I did not feel like I had to justify leaving. Usually when I tell my story, I am already preparing for the counter argument, already bracing for the but have you tried and the but she is still your mother and the but God says. And tonight in this room with this man sitting across from me, I did not feel like I had to fight for the right to have been hurt. That is rare. That is genuinely rare. And that right there is the problem with how we handle these conversations in our communities. We make the wounded person prove their wounds before we offer them any comfort. We put people on trial for their own pain. Maya had to walk in here tonight and lay out 3 separate wounds: abandonment, abuse, and coercion before anyone was willing to say, you know what, you were wronged. And that is not okay. That should never be the price of compassion. I want every person watching this to hear that. You should not have to bleed in public to earn the right to be believed. We are not done, but we are going to take a breath before we go deeper, because this conversation is just getting started.
Segment 3. The pulpit meets the wound.
I want to put something on the table because I think we keep dancing around it. We live in a culture, especially in African and Black communities, where family is not just a relationship. It is an identity. It is a religion. You do not question it. You do not leave it. You do not speak against it publicly. And I want to ask both of you, is that healthy? Or have we built a culture that protects the institution of family at the expense of the individuals inside it?
There is truth in that. Community and culture can sometimes wet family in ways that are culture can sometimes weaponize family in ways that are harmful. I have seen it in my own congregation. Mothers using guilt as control, fathers using provision as power, siblings using loyalty as leverage. That is not God's design for family. That is human brokenness hiding behind a sacred name.
And yet the sermons every Sunday still say honor your father and mother, still say family first, still say forgive and restore. Nobody is preaching the sermon that says sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is leave. Nobody is standing at that pulpit saying you are allowed to choose yourself.
Because the pulpit is also trying to hold together the people who would give up too easily, who would walk away from something worth saving because it got difficult. We are preaching to a whole congregation, not just to the ones who need to leave. We are also preaching to the ones who need to stay and fight.
That's powerful. And in doing so, you leave people like me sitting in those pews wondering if our pain is valid, wondering if we are the problem, wondering if we just prayed harder or forgave faster, we could fix something that was never ours to fix. That is the tension right there. The pulpit is trying to hold a room full of different stories with one message. And the problem with one message is that it fits some people perfectly and it crushes others completely.
Yes, it has. More nights than I can count.
The idea that the same sermon that restores one person might be the thing that keeps another person stuck.
Yes, more than I have ever said publicly, because I stand up there every Sunday and I see faces. And I know that in that congregation, there's the woman whose husband hits her and she is staying because I preached on covenant last month. There's the young man whose father has never loved him properly and he is still showing up at that family table every Christmas because I preached on honor. And I ask myself, am I helping them or am I holding them in place?
And what is your answer?
Both, depending on the person, and that is the most uncomfortable truth I carry in this ministry.
Both. That is an honest answer, and I respect it. But Maya, I want you to respond to that, because you are one of the people being held in place. What do you want pastors like David to actually do differently? Not theologically, practically more open dialogue. I want them to make space in the sermon for the people who are not going to reconcile, who are not going to restore, who are going to leave and never go back, and who need to know that God is not angry with them for it. I want one Sunday, just one, where the message is not about fighting for your family, but about fighting for yourself. I want the person sitting in the back pew with bruises under their clothes to hear something that gives them permission to walk out of that door and not come back to the thing that is hurting them.
Then let me say it now, to whoever is watching this tonight, you do not need a Sunday sermon to give you permission. I am giving it to you right now. If your family is hurting you consistently, deliberately, without remorse, you are allowed to leave. You are allowed to heal. You are allowed to build a life that does not include the people who broke you. God is not sitting in heaven disappointed that you chose your own survival. He is not keeping score of the family dinners you stopped attending. He sees your wounds, and he is not asking you to go back and collect more.
I needed someone to say that to me 15 years ago.
I know, and I am sorry it took this long.
Pastor, I want to ask you something that might be uncomfortable. Have you ever sat across from someone in your ministry and privately thought this family cannot be saved? Walk away. Have you ever thought that?
Yes, I have. There are situations, abuse, addiction, chronic toxicity, where I have quietly told someone that God does not require them to remain in danger in the name of family. I have said that in private more times than I have said it from the pulpit. And perhaps that is a conversation I need to have more publicly.
Say that louder, Pastor, because there are people watching this right now who need to hear it from someone like you, not from a therapist, not from a friend, from a pastor, from someone whose voice carries the weight of God in their community.
God does not require you to remain in danger in the name of family. Your life, your well-being, your peace, those matter to God. Family is sacred, but so are you.
I need to say something right now, because what Pastor Owusu just said is not just a pastoral statement, it is a lifeline. And I know there is somebody watching this tonight who has been waiting, maybe for years, for someone with that kind of authority to say exactly those words. Someone who could not leave because the voice in their head sounded like a pulpit. Because every time they tried to walk away, the guilt pulled them back. And tonight that voice just changed. I do not take that lightly, and I do not think you should either. Family is sacred, but so are you. We are going to hold that going into our final segment, because we are not done yet.
Segment 4, Roots and Release.
I want to bring this home, because I know right now there are two kinds of people watching this. There are people who are Maya, who have been carrying wounds from their family for years, who have been told to forgive, to restore, to keep showing up while slowly disappearing inside, who needed someone to tell them that leaving was not failure, that choosing themselves was not sin. And there are people who are on the other side of that story, who pushed someone away, who failed someone they loved, who made choices out of fear and tradition and called it family values, and who are now sitting somewhere wondering if it is too late to make it right. And then there is a third kind of person, the one who is still in the middle, still inside the burning house, still telling themselves it is not that bad, still minimizing, still shrinking, still performing loyalty to people who have never once performed it back. I want to speak to all three tonight. But first, I have one more question for each of you, and I want the realest answers you have ever given on any platform. Pastor, you have spent over 2 decades telling people to fight for their families. Has there ever been a family in your ministry that you fought for, that you believed in, that still fell apart?
A family I counseled for 4 years, a husband and wife who both genuinely wanted to make it work, both people of faith, both trying, and it still ended. And what it taught me, what it forced me to accept, is that love alone is not always enough. Effort alone is not always enough. Sometimes two people can both be trying and still be wrong for each other, still be destroying each other without meaning to. And the most loving thing that happened in that situation was when they finally let go. They are both better today apart than they ever were together. And I had to make peace with the fact that restoration does not always look like staying. Sometimes restoration looks like two people finally being free.
Sometimes restoration looks like two people finally being free. Pastor, you keep saying things tonight that your church probably has never heard from you.
Perhaps they should have heard them sooner.
Maya, same question, different angle. You left your family, you rebuilt, you survived. But I want to ask you something nobody probably asks. What did you lose when you left? I lost the version of myself that belongs somewhere. That is the hardest thing to explain to people who have never had to cut off family. Everyone sees the freedom, nobody sees the grief. Because when you leave a toxic family, you are not just leaving the people who hurt you.
That's so powerful, Maya.
You are leaving the holidays, the language, the food, the inside jokes, the childhood photographs, the sense of knowing where you come from. You grieve all of it, even the broken parts, even the parts that hurt you, because they were still yours. And I had to learn how to be a person without a home base, without a place to return to. And some days, even now, that is the loneliest feeling in the world. Even now. Healing is not linear. Some days I am completely at peace with every decision I made. And some days I drive past a family having Sunday lunch through a restaurant window and I feel something I cannot fully name, but loss. A quiet, permanent loss. And that right there is what nobody tells you when they hand you the cut-off toxic family advice on social media. They make it look clean. They make it look like liberation with a neat bow.
They do not tell you about the Sunday afternoon.
The birthdays you spend with people you chose but who do not yet know all your stories. The moments when you need your mother and you have to remind yourself why you cannot call her. Nobody talks about that part, and I think that silence does people a disservice. Because you can make the right decision and still grieve it. Those two things are not contradictions, they are both true at the same time. Exactly, and I wish someone had prepared me for that. I thought leaving would fix the hole. It did not fix the hole, it just meant I was no longer being hurt while standing in it. And slowly, very slowly, I started filling it with things that were actually mine. Friends who showed up, a therapist who saw me, small moments of belonging that scratch. Same as what I lost, it will never be the same. And after everything, safe is not nothing. Safe is not nothing. Write that down. Pastor, final word.
Family is still sacred to me. I will never stop believing that. But tonight, Maya reminded me that sacredness must never become a cage. That the God I serve is a God of redemption, and sometimes redemption looks like restoration, and sometimes it looks like release. To the person watching this who is still inside a family that is hurting them, I see you. God sees you. And you are not required to keep paying a price that was never yours to pay. To the person who has already left, you are not lost. You are not cursed. You are not less. You made a hard decision in a hard situation and you are still standing. That is not failure. That is faith of a different kind. And to the families that have pushed someone away, there is still time. Not always, but sometimes. And if there is still time, use it. Ego is not worth the person you are losing. Pride is not worth the silence that comes after. To everyone wrestling with this, I pray you find the wisdom to know which season you are in. And I pray you find the courage to honor it, whatever it costs.
I want to close with this. Tonight we came in here to debate whether family is everything. And what we found underneath all the argument, underneath all the theology, underneath all the pain is that the real question was never about family at all. The real question was, do you matter? Does your pain count? Does your survival deserve as much protection as the institution you were born into? And the only answer I will defend on this show is yes, you matter. Your pain counts. Your survival is sacred. Blood does not automatically equal love, but you are always worth loving, even if the people who were supposed to show you that never did. I am Preshpen and this is Real Talk with Preshpen. Share this with someone who needs to hear it tonight, not tomorrow, tonight. We will see you next on this channel, and trust me, next episode we are going even harder. We are still on the theme till truth do us path.
The truth doesn't always bring comfort, but it always brings clarity. If this conversation spoke to you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.